What's up, guys? It's Liz Kelly. All month long, The Ringer will be breaking down 2018's highs and lows in music, pop culture, sports, TV, and film. Some of the things we've hit so far are the best TV show episodes and the best rap albums of the year. And this week, we are writing about the best performances and the 10 best action movies of 2018. Plus, we'll be reacting to both the Golden Globes and Grammy nominations on the site. You can check all of these things out on theringer.com.
Welcome to the Ringer NBA show. This is The Corner 3. I'm Kevin O'Connor, and joining me here in Los Angeles, it's Ringer Associate Editor Danny Chau.
I'm here. Let's do this.
From Dallas, Texas, it's Ringer staff writer John Tjarks.
I'm coming to you live from the new Ringer Dallas Bureau. Things
Yeah.
well over here.
Congrats, John.
John, recently closed in on a house out in Dallas. This is great.
By recently, we mean last night. But the pod never sleeps, so we're still doing it.
It's actually one of the reasons why we're recording on Friday morning instead of Thursday afternoon like usual. We're recording this at 9:11 a.m. on Friday, December 7th. 6 teams played last night on Thursday. The night ended with the Utah Jazz destroying the Houston Rockets 118-91, and that was despite Rudy Gobert getting ejected 3 minutes in the game for swatting the powder on the table and then arguing with the refs from the bench. that was hilarious, Danny, wasn't it?
I swear, like the one time we're able to discuss the Thursday games and they are complete garbage.
Oh my goodness.
They're complete garbage.
All three of them.
Yeah. I mean, where do we start?
All season long, Houston's defense has been the conversation. They were 7th ranked last year. Now they're the 5th worst. They stunk last night, hemorrhaged points to the Utah Jazz. Their offense is still ranked 9th, but it's not number 1 like it was last year. And I thought last night, without Gobert playing, only scoring 91 points on the 92.9 points per 100 possessions, that was startling. Like, what did Utah do last night to neutralize Houston?
They pretty much stuck to their game plan, right? Like they had a big drop back and they defended the 3 well. And that's just, it was astounding because the Rockets are normally accustomed to playing this Jazz team no matter who's on the court. They couldn't do anything yesterday.
John, what's the difference this year with that Houston offense?
I mean, it just seems to me like Chris Paul. Like, they need so much from Harden and Paul. And if Chris Paul can't be like all-world, all-NBA point guard, like Harden's still killing it. Harden's still putting up crazy numbers, but just Chris Paul is getting older. Yeah,
last night's game, according to Synergy, the Houston Rockets scored 32 points on 43 pick-and-roll possessions. So that's 0.74 points per possession. That's
bad.
Horrible. And this entire season, that's the big difference with Houston's offense. They're ranked 20th in pick-and-roll scoring efficiency this season compared to 4th last year. They're not drawing as many fouls. They're turning the ball over slightly more. They're obviously not shooting three-pointers as well this season either. They rank 24th in three-point percentage overall. This team, on both ends of the floor, of course, their defense is problematic, but they need their pick-and-roll, to both your points, they need their pick and roll to be at an elite level like it was last year. And like you said, John, I think part of that is Chris Paul. With him this season, it seems like he's lost a little bit of his great first step.
I mean, this is his lowest true shooting percentage since he was 21, since his second year in the league. Now this is like year 14. That's probably the biggest concern for me, though. I think he must be somewhat kind of pacing himself.
Yeah, and it's not helping that Eric Gordon really isn't picking up any slack. He's shooting probably his worst 3-point percentage since he was on the Pelicans, I'm guessing. And that's left a lot of burden on Harden, who is having a career season in terms of offensive numbers, in terms of offensive output. But, that's not something you want out of a team that, was a game away from the finals last year.
You mentioned a lot of the offensive burden, and forgive me, I forget who tweeted this out, but someone had a stat out there this week about how James Harden is shooting more pull-up threes than really anybody else in the league, and I looked it up this morning. I believe he has 214 attempted three-pointers off the dribble compared to only 14 spot-up threes. That is just insane. And like the last 2 years, it was like that too, where I think around 75 to 80% of his three-pointers were off the dribble compared to off the catch. But right now, like 9 out of 10 of his shots from 3 are off the dribble. He's just guys aren't creating for him as much as they did last year.
You look at the structure of their team, right? So their 3rd and 4th best player, it's Gordon and Capella. And both those guys are complementary players, right? They really can't become creators. And so it's just Harden and Paul. And if you're paying Chris Paul $40 million, there's not much room on your roster to get more creators.
One of the things that's interesting, in regards to Chris Paul, earlier this week, he had a quote where he said, "I'm still not that concerned. Somebody's going to beat us 4 out of 7 times. I don't see that happening." I think it's pretty easy to see a team beating them 4 out of 7 times right now, considering their flaws on offense, considering their horrific defense. It's not hard to see, Danny.
Yeah, it's a really rigid, very structured offense and defense where you're basically asking all of your complementary players to be complementary players. Right now, they are not complementary, and so therefore you have a huge problem. We talked pretty much all season about how, they're overhauling their defense, but they're having offensive woes too. The numbers are still there, but in terms of execution and all of that, like, at what point do you talk about a legitimate trade?
How big are you talking here?
Right.
Are you talking a big trade?
I'm talking, you need to get someone at least on the, a third option on a team type.
Well, they wanted
player.
Jimmy Butler, of course, right? They made that offer with first-round picks. They made some variation with Eric Gordon. So clearly, Daryl Morey, anybody can recognize that the team has flaws and that they need to make a change. Jimmy Butler's already been traded. He's off the table. John, I'm curious, do you think Kevin Love is a guy that they should go for when he's eligible to be traded on January 24th next month? Is he somebody that makes sense for Houston to take a gamble on?
Man, I got to see him play. Like, you're already paying Chris so much money, and like Love's got a bad back and bad feet, and he's an older big who struggles
bad
on
knees.
Yeah, I mean, those injuries don't really get better as you get older. I don't know that bringing Love in, because that pretty much locks you in going forward with Love, Paul, Harden. I don't know you need that much. That's a big swing for the fences. I think I'd rather have Otto. I've been saying that for Otto Porter makes more sense for them than Kevin Love.
Right. And yeah, you're looking at the types of players that D'Antoni is starting to warm up to. Daniel House, Gary Clark. They're, wings with big capabilities. And so you're looking at
versatile, even though they can't defend right now on defense.
Sure, it's largely theoretical.
Yeah.
You get in a guy like Otto Porter, who is basically the idealized version of what they could be. That makes a lot of sense. How do they do it?
I think though, going back on Paul's quote, I think like what he's saying basically is like, I can turn it back up when I need to. I think that's what he's saying. It's like, when it comes to the playoffs, I'm going to pace myself. We still have James, still got me. And I think if Paul can go back to what he was in the playoffs, they're a pretty dangerous team, even with this roster.
Can he though, John?
I don't know. That's the question.
I mean, you wrote a big article either last season or the year before, I forget, where it was like small point guards like Chris Paul tend to fizzle out, I believe, if I remember correctly.
That was last year.
That was last season, right? So Chris Paul just looks slow. He looks old. I don't see the same burst that he had last season. And you could easily say, oh, it's because he's dealing with the hamstring injury right now. Yeah, that's what ended last season for him. That's what's nagged him for years as well. There's no guarantee that goes away. It could get worse. It could get slightly better. But I think it's unrealistic to expect Chris Paul to be Chris Paul at 100%. And even if he is at some point during the season, it gets back to the same thing it's been every year for him. Can he translate it into April and May? I don't know. I'm not sure if he can.
So this is like slightly tangential, but I've been thinking about it for a couple days now for some reason. If you switched Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry's like responsibilities on the respective teams, what do you think would happen?
That's an interesting question.
I think Houston would be helped right now. Lowry's better than Paul right now.
Yeah.
Paul would be awesome in Toronto, though. His job would be so much easier.
Because there's just on Toronto, I think Lowry has been blessed with having options at every single position.
Up and down
the roster, with the backups, with everything. I
guess the real question, Danny, are you changing their paychecks too? I think Lowry gets like half as much as Paul.
No, I think Lowry's at $30 million this year, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 30. I think he's expired, but half the years at least. Yeah.
Right.
Chris Paul by the end of that deal will be making double.
Like, would you trust Lowry to turn it up? Because right now his scoring has decreased. Obviously, his assists have gone up by miles. But would you trust him to kind of play that Chris Paul role where he's gonna have to like run a lot more pick and roll, shoot a lot more off the dribble, create for himself?
Yeah, I think that would be intriguing. Part of me wonders if it would, I don't want to say it's a wash, but I wonder if that wouldn't make enough of a difference for the team.
Right.
I mean, it's the same small point guard question, right? With Lowry instead of Paul.
I think in regards to Kevin Love, Houston ranks second worst in defensive rebounding percentage this year. Like, Kevin Love obviously has his limitations on defense, but if you're Houston, you mentioned how they would get locked in, John, if they traded for Love. I think they're already locked in with Harden and Paul. And maybe that's the type of risk you need to take where you're putting in a filler contracts, you're adding maybe a first-round pick, maybe one sweetener for Cleveland to dump that deal. And you know what? You're just saying, screw it. We're going all in this year with Love, with Paul, with Harden, with Gordon, and we're going to see what happens because you know what? Our backs are against the wall anyway. We need to do something because there's no way this is going to work unless we do try something. I think
I can tell you right now, no way works with Kevin Love either. To me, that's like a low ceiling, low floor move.
Yeah.
Because with Love's injury history, and then you've seen him against the Warriors 4 years now. You're still going to play the Warriors in the playoffs.
And I just don't see Love and Capella. I mean, they're inevitably going to have to play together. That's just not D'Antoni ball.
It's not. Alternatively, I heard there were some rumblings this week that Houston had interest in J.R. Smith from Cleveland. I heard New Orleans had interest in J.R. Smith as well. And there's some stuff over the course of the summer or before the season that maybe Solomon Hill could be someone that could be moved. These guys, these names of J.R. Smith and Solomon Hill, they're not doing anything for Houston. I feel like Kevin Love maybe can. It's a low ceiling move, like you said, John, but I think it's a little higher ceiling than J.R. Smith.
Well, how about this? If we're thinking move, how about Spencer Dinwiddie? That's the kind of guy I'd rather see in Houston than Kevin Love.
I just think there's too much
overlap.
overlap.
At least Dinwiddie can defend.
Can he?
He's
though?
a big.
I don't know. Can he?
More than Kevin Love?
I mean, wait, weren't we just looking at I know, the RPM numbers are flawed, but wasn't Dinwiddie second to last?
Oh, that's true.
Defensive RPM?
I just don't think, I remember years ago, my first time meeting Brian Scalabrine, but this story always comes to mind. And Scal just started rambling about defense. And he's like, it annoys me when people don't talk about defensive rebounding on defense. He's like, that's the most overlooked aspect of defense. It's not about man-to-man. It's not about always helping. It's not about...
I can imagine why Scal said this.
And Scal's like, if you rebounding the ball is what ends the possession. That's what gets you the ball on offense. And one thing we do know Kevin Love does at an elite level is rebound. And right now, Houston is one of the worst defensive rebounding teams on the court. I think one of the reasons they've been worse is because Clint Capella is getting pulled to the perimeter, which pulls him away from the rim, which means he's not able to rebound as effectively. And it also neutralizes his rim protection.
Wait, Kev, if you trade for Kevin Love, you can bench PJ Tucker?
I don't know, man.
Tucker's one of their best players.
I don't know.
You figure it out later, right?
I don't know what the solutions are. I think that's really what I'm saying. There's just not a lot of options for this team, and maybe Kevin Love is one of them. If they want to take a grand risk that could end up really screwing them, but you know what? Maybe it helps them out a little bit. Scary. One team that's been better as of late is the Boston Celtics. They beat the Knicks last night 128-100. Since Thanksgiving, Danny, they have the number 2 offense.
They're back.
They have the number 2 offense since Thanksgiving. Gordon Hayward and Jaylen Brown are now coming off the bench. What's been different for this team over the last week plus?
I think it's just putting the 2 Marcuses in the starting lineup, right? It's realizing that the best option, the best course of attack for this Celtics team isn't necessarily putting the 5 best players, but putting your 5 best players in the best positions for them to succeed.
Yeah, Danny, the interesting thing with Boston is you could argue that their starting 5 right now is their best 5, with Hayward not quite at his 100%.
I should have said in a vacuum. They're fine.
But right now, either way, right? I think right now what they're doing just makes more sense. This morning, I looked on Cleaning the Glass. I was curious if their shot distribution was any different since Thanksgiving, and it's not. It's pretty much identical, actually. They're still not getting to the rim a lot. They're still shooting a lot of mid-range jumpers around the league average, still shooting a heck of a lot of threes as well. They're just making a lot of shots.
Yeah.
They're shooting 7 percentage points better at the rim. They're shooting 7 percentage points better from mid-range. They're shooting 7 percentage points better from 3-point range as well. And as a result, their effective field goal percentage ranks 2nd. Points per possession ranks 2nd over the stretch as well. Is it sustainable?
Tennessee.
What's up, John?
Is this a trade team? Do you think they're gonna make a move at some point with this team? Or are they waiting for Anthony Davis?
I think they're waiting for AD. And I don't think for what it's worth, I don't think Anthony Davis will get traded this season. There's no way. No, there's no way. It's not happening. It makes zero sense for the Pelicans to trade him now. And besides, Boston can't trade for Anthony Davis right now because of a weird rule in the CBA that disallows them from having two players that were designated players when they signed their rookie extension. So Kyrie Irving was signed by Cavaliers in 2014. Anthony Davis was in 2015. Because of a weird rule, they can't trade for Anthony Davis, and the Pelicans aren't trading him anyway.
I'm taking your word on that. Like I have no idea if that's true.
They can't. The Celtics cannot trade for Anthony Davis until the summer when Kyrie Irving opts out of his contract. Will they make a smaller move? When you look at this team, John, is there something that you think that they should target for their roster right now?
I'm just thinking more for with Rozier and Brown, them coming off the bench. I just wonder how that's going to play over the course of the season.
Would you? If you're Boston with Terry Rozier coming off the bench, would you rather flip him for another long-term asset, or are you thinking for a guy who can help now? I guess because the way I'm looking at it is if you're Boston, A, he's your Kyrie Irving insurance long-term, or if Kyrie decides to leave, you have Terry Rozier still as a restricted free agent. And B, Kyrie Irving, with his injury history, if he were to go down, at least Rozier can elevate into his role. Because Boston wants to win the championship this year. That's their goal. And unless it's a deal that can help them win the title this year, I'm not sure. I'm not sure they're going to do that.
I just wonder if they're burning this asset by putting him in a smaller role. I feel like they always like to maximize their assets,
including Jaylen Brown, or
Jalen's a different question. What's up with him this year, KOC? He's been struggling.
He's been better as of late, though.
He had his best game of the season last night. Off the bench,
and he talked after the game about accepting a bench role and how it doesn't matter. Nor does it.
Interesting.
I often wonder, I wish sometimes we would talk about finishers instead of starters in the league. Who are the guys closing games? That's ultimately what matters most, right?
Right.
In a close game, who are the players coaches are leaning on at the end of games? Sometimes that might not be Jaylen Brown, right? But I think oftentimes it will be, depending on the lineups Boston wants to go with. Last night, Phoenix got whooped again. This team's been...
not just last night.
Every game they've gotten whooped, but especially this week. They trailed 36-9 against the Kings on Tuesday and ended up losing by 17. And then last night against the Blazers, they trailed 34-9 after the first quarter, ended up losing by 22. Danny, the Suns just need to press the simulate rest of season button. It's over.
I wish.
And it's over.
I wish that existed.
They already have.
Yeah, and Tjarks actually wrote a great piece for today about the Suns and their wing dilemma, pretty much. Tjarks, you'd like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it's weird right now because Booker and Warren are out. And with those two out, the whole team is completely cooked. But basically the idea is they've got Booker and Ayton, so how does Josh Jackson make sense? And then even though Mikal Bridges is probably not as talented as Josh Jackson, he might be a better long-term fit. And so now you have your number 4 overall pick from last year. And how does he fit with this team going forward?
He doesn't fit. He doesn't fit. I think, I read your article this morning, John. Josh Jackson, it seems like the greater takeaway when I read your article is this. Drafting a non-shooter in today's league where shooting is a premium skill comes with significant risks. And right now, Phoenix had other options in that draft they could have taken with the 4th pick. Guys who are playing now, guys who can contribute now. Josh Jackson is just not one of those players. Not only can he not shoot, he's just getting stoned at the rim by even just anybody being in the near vicinity of the rim. He just cannot score anywhere.
Not strong enough.
No, he's not. And his defense within this culture of the Phoenix Suns, nobody's defending. Nobody is defending on this team. There was that moment last night where Mikal Bridges and Igor Kokoshkov, they argued a little bit. It looked like Igor was trying to teach Mikal Bridges.
Mikal was just trying to get out of there.
Mikal has never really had instances like this with Jay Wright at Villanova, has he?
Right. Yeah, no.
He's a calm guy usually. Sometimes maybe even a little too chill. But I don't think I've seen that side of him last night. It seems, Danny, that this team right now, when the Sixers were tanking for years, people were talking about, they need locker room culture. They need a veteran. Well, Phoenix has a veteran in Trevor Ariza, and he's not trying much either. He's not running back on defense. Nobody on this team is.
He's waiting for either the buyout or the trade. I think he realized pretty early on, okay, I got my money. And now, in the best interest of both me and the team, they're going to let me go.
Goodbye. Yeah. Goodbye. John, is there a team that you would like to see Trevor Ariza traded to?
I mean, he can fit pretty much anywhere. It's just a matter of that salary point. Is he going to get bought out or is he going to get traded? Because if he gets bought out, it's a lot easier to put him somewhere at a $1 million salary than at 15.
The one thing that's bothered me a lot this week, and this has been nagging me the whole week, DeAndre Ayton after that game against the Kings, he said,
he had quite some quotes in there.
He did. He said, quote, "You down by that much, especially that early, there's no way you're getting back into that game." And
how much were they down by? Oh, that was the game.
36-9.
Yeah. Okay.
And earlier last month, he had a quote after a loss to the Clippers about, getting intimidated by Boban. He said, "I felt like I played like a rookie tonight. I got really thrown off by that big dude. I'm not going to lie." And I think back to, and after he was drafted, he was asked what's success for him. He's like, "Definitely getting my second contract." Just, Ayton, it just feels like he's playing with a loser quitter mentality. And it just annoys me because, like, who cares how much you're down by after the first quarter? Have you ever watched sports? Like, comebacks happen all the time. They happen in Super Bowls. They happen in the NBA Finals. They happen in the Western Conference Finals. They happen in the regular season. So for Ayton, it's so annoying that this guy who started off really strong in Summer League, preseason, even early regular season, is playing like this. Like, you need to toughen up, man. You need to develop a winning mentality by just practicing winning actions, playing hard, staying focused. Focus on your goals within the game. And I think it would be a shame if this just defeatist attitude took over and ate him alive from the inside out.
Keep
Kevin,
going.
did you watch him in Arizona? He wasn't exactly creating a winning culture there.
No, you're right. John, I'm like, you look like a genius right now for ranking him behind Jaren Jackson Jr., right? And I look back at that and it's like, shit, man. And it's just obvious with some of these things. Like, this mentality was there in Arizona. It was there in high school. And right now in Phoenix, it's manifesting in the worst possible way.
I will say the one thing with Ayton, like the one thing that's really scary, which everyone saw coming, I think, was the block shots. He's just not ever blocking shots, basically. And he's playing no rim defense. Yeah.
Right.
I think what they have to do, so the one lineup that's worked for them this year is when they went point Booker, Bridges, Ariza, Warren, Ayton. And I think you tell Ayton, you're switching everything. We have big guys around you. So instead of protecting the rim, it's like you're always playing good man-to-man defense. I think that's probably the best way to use him going forward is to, like, you're just going to be guarding everyone. You have to try all the time. Don't worry about thinking and being the backline defender. Just switch everything and guards.
That's really
he has the tools to do that.
Yeah. And he's mentioned during the pre-draft process that, he's totally comfortable switching on guys. And I think, if anything, that would kind of bring out the kind of competitive spirit in him in that, people don't think I can defend. I will actually try out on the perimeter where, look, if you get exposed, then whatever happened with him and Darren Collison, him dropping, he's going to want to avenge that. So
and I think it removes the thinking for him too. If you're switching everything, it's a simplified defense. It's just like, just go.
Just a random quick aside. Not giving up on DeAndre Ayton, of course. He's still averaging 16 and 10 as a rookie with 3. He can still pass the ball.
It was a great monologue you had, though.
But with that said, the mentality is just worrisome.
It's funny.
It's really worrisome. It scares me.
Last year during draft class, we talked a lot, and Tjarks has talked to him in person. And he's obviously a very engaging character, and this is kind of part of it. He has
two on-court personalities.
Yeah, the kind of personality he has in these quotes. He's still a kid. He's still learning things.
Honest.
He's very honest,
forward, and genuine.
What the thing that the Boban quote reminded me of was this. This is a deep cut. But Steven Zimmerman, in his first preseason game on the Magic, in his very first game, he played against the Grizzlies, and Zebo was on that team. And he was just like, I didn't know what to expect, and I was actually really happy that like Zebo took it easy on me. And I was just like, what kind of quote is that? God. Why did you say that?
Yeah, I'll say with Ayton, a lot of guys think that stuff, but he'll just say it. He just doesn't care.
Play Dragon Bender more. That's the solution. He looked good last night in garbage time. Just saying.
We're really getting the deep cuts now. We're getting the Dragon Bender talk.
Thank you, Microsoft Surface, for being a sponsor of the show. Need a device that helps you get stuff done, but is also perfect when you want to catch up on some fun, like streaming live sports or checking on your fantasy team? Check out the latest member of the Microsoft Surface family, the new Surface Pro 6. Just take the keyboard off and use it like a tablet or snap it back on and use it like a laptop. With up to 13 and a half hours of battery life and the new 8th gen Intel Core processor, it's everything you love about the Surface Pro now, even more powerful. Back to Corner 3. Moving on to The Kids Are Alright, The Ringer released its top 25 player list based solely on their performance for the 2018-19 season.
We like to overreact. We don't need to put anything.
It was a fun list. I enjoyed that a lot. But there's only one player on that list from the 2016 draft class, and that was, of course, Ben Simmons, son of Bill Simmons. Who are some guys next year, Danny, or in the next couple of years from that 2016 class that you think could make a Ringer top 25 list? I
mean, obviously, if you're looking at age and production, you're probably going to say Jamal Murray. The dude's super young still. Mm-hmm. How young is he? He's 21?
21, I believe.
If that. The production still isn't there. He's still an inconsistent player. Everyone loved to talk about that 48-point performance. After that, he hasn't really had too many standout.
31 against the Magic.
31.
Only on 10 of 25, but impressive.
An 8-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio.
Yes.
So, there's definitely room to improve there. Pascal Siakam has been amazing this season.
I love watching him run the floor.
My God.
I love it!
Look, if there's one signature move that I think has caught everyone by surprise, it's his spin move.
Tjarks, is that spin move the best signature move in the NBA right now? I mean, did you see the pirouette he had the other night where he caught the ball and just spun?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's the Luka step back though. Come on.
In the spirit of overreaction, yes, let's go with it. Why not? And then another guy we can shout out too, Domantas Sabonis. He's been crushing it all season. So here's my favorite stat for Sabonis. So I was looking this up. There's only 3 players in the league who shoot more than 60% from 2-point range and average more than 3 assists. I think that's interesting because that's telling you he's scoring all the time at the rim, but more than 3 assists mean he's not just getting lobs, alley-oops on pick and rolls. And that's Giannis, Eric Bledsoe, and Sabonis.
Wow.
Right? And he's not playing in the space that Giannis and Bledsoe are playing in. The Pacers don't really shoot threes that much.
No, they don't.
He's just straight wrecking people at the rim.
Sabonis' development, Tjarks, has been interesting to monitor. He was drafted 11th, obviously in the draft trade with the Thunder and the Magic. I had him ranked 12th his year in the draft. He obviously, if we're doing a redraft now of 2016, he would go higher at this point. Were there signs in college that he could have become the player that he already is now in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, Sabonis isn't the kind of guy I usually like because he's not very long. He doesn't really shoot. But I remember
he's your anti-player, actually.
I know, but it's crazy. The one thing about him. So I remember, I think this was the first article I wrote for The Ringer. I'm back when we had a mailing list. It was an NCAA tournament, and he was playing Jakob Poeltl in the second round. And I don't know if you remember this game, KOC, but he absolutely murdered Jakob Poeltl. It was 30 points to 5. And it was this guy is just killing. Other young bigs cannot handle Sabonis. And it was the same. He played Marquise Chris early in the season, and he literally fouled out Chris in 15 minutes. It was straight dribble in the chest, pump fake, dunk, foul. You're out of the game. And to me, with young bigs, I think the ability to beat other young bigs in college is pretty important because all those guys can kill your average NCAA big man. But really, it's those big on big matchups that tell you a lot about a player, I think.
His defense has been solid this year. I think that was one of the concerns I had pre-draft. I think there's no question with his offense. Like you said, Tjarks, he beat up on every other big that had NBA upside, including Chris, including Poeltl. But his defense, I had some questions about how he could switch on defense, his short wingspan, how he could protect the rim. But in a way, it almost gets back to the conversation we were having about rebounding, where Sabonis was a really, really great rebounder in college, and he still is today in the NBA. And he's gotten better defending laterally on the perimeter. I think his positioning and his communication on defense allows him to be at least a solid rim protector.
Yeah, he's such a smart player, man. He's smart and tough, which is unusual. And then, so we were talking about the 2016 draft coming up to the podcast. And we're kind of going over it, looking back in it. And what jumped out to me is after those first 2 or 3 picks, I think everybody Ingram and Simmons. And then you're talking about Murray at 7, Sabonis at 12, Siakam at 29. It feels like to me, sometimes with the draft, there's like groupthink that develops just naturally. And you're like, okay, this guy's in the range of 4 to 6. He's in the range of 7 to 9. He's in the range of 10 to 15. But what do those ranges really mean? Like 3 years from now, no one's going to care, right? Like the best players can come from all spots of the draft.
Yeah, and that's something that I kind of applaud the Raptors for doing. Like, I don't think any of us had Siakam in our first round ranks.
I had him 49th.
Yeah, like I had him as a rising second rounder. He was definitely gaining a lot of buzz. But, you know, Masai Ujiri just goes for his guy. Like, no one knew who Bruno Caboclo was, and that didn't work out, but he took a swing.
He did. I remember Bruno was drafted. He was unranked on every single website. People are like, who? And that never happens.
And I've told this story before, but I knew about it. I knew about it.
It's a great story. Tell it, Danny.
We had, at Grantland, we had a tip about this kid because there was, I think our editor back then, Rafe Bartholomew, knew a scout back in Brazil, and he just happened to be at this game, and he's like, Masai Ujiri's here. That's a sign. And I dug up videos for it, and it was just like 4 videos of Bruno dunking on like vertical film. It was hilarious. And I was just like, I didn't feel comfortable writing about it, but I wish I did. So
Danny, you're saying we should follow Masai. We should hire someone to track him around the world.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand for that one.
Yeah, I think so too, especially in regards to Siakam. That's another guy where I look back at my ranking pre-draft, and it's like, I look at my scouting notes, and it's like, oh, pretty accurate. But the ranking, I think with him and a lot of other people, looked at maybe the jumper. The jumper was not good enough. And it's gotten better. That, of course, that's something sometimes you can't expect to happen. But also the little things, like on defense, the effort was always there with him. That was always there at New Mexico State with Pascal Siakam. But wasn't there is fundamentals. And that's something that's gotten a lot better over time with the Toronto Raptors. What's also gotten better is his ball handling, which has enabled him to not just be a guy who runs the floor and gets ahead of the defense in transition, but a guy who was already a really good rebounder in college and now can rebound the ball and go coast to coast and do his unbelievably beautiful spin move.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to come up with a transformation that's been as eye-popping as Siakam's. Maybe like the name that comes out for me is like Paul Millsap, who went from the greatest rebounding forward in NCAA history to becoming a guy who basically models his game after LeBron, being able to do everything on the court.
Are you saying Pascal Siakam is the next LeBron James?
I'm saying he's the next Paul Millsap, I guess.
I think with Siakam recently, that I think he had 4 possessions where he was the transition ball handler in college, over 2 years in college. And he has like already 60 this season, something along those lines.
That's wild.
It's really, really fascinating to see how that change has occurred with him.
Yeah, and I think too with like just Siakam, it's just like, let's just remember, like, we're looking at players from all over the world. They're all very young. They're all at very different stages of their development. So like, when you make these rankings, you're like looking at, I'm trying to remember this year, it's like, don't be afraid to say quote unquote crazy things, because it doesn't really matter. Like after those first 2 or 3 players, it's all in the air, really.
Absolutely. I think whether a guy you have way higher than anybody else or way lower than anybody else, you know what, you just got to go with it, right? If you talk to people in front offices, well, you want disagreements in your front office. You want your GM to have a guy ranked 6th on his board, and that they're thinking about taking him, but you want that general manager challenged by others in the front office to like, you know what, this guy's a first round pick. He should not be in consideration for us. You want disagreement. That's what you want to promote. And it seems like in the public sphere, that doesn't happen. Like so many rankings are fairly similar. And if they're not, oftentimes that person is bashed. Like, how do you have this guy ranked 25th when everybody else has him 7th? Well, that's because I feel differently.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe he should be 7th. But there's also a chance maybe a lot of people in the NBA have that guy ranked in the 40s or something like that. I think when it comes to draft analysis,
that's the one time you should put the blinders on.
Just put the blinders on. And I think what matters is it does matter to get feedback from others in the sense that sometimes you might learn something about the player, but you can't let it necessarily affect your opinion. I think that's your underlying...
And in terms of positioning,
yes,
like it definitely shouldn't be affecting you.
I think that's your underlying point here, John. I mean, like, do you read other draft coverage, or do you tend to just ignore it and just try to keep the blinders on and just focus on your thoughts on a player?
I've been trying it this year. Like, before I'm like always online reading stuff, but like this year I'm really trying to do it. And like, I think what that comes back to, like, it's called the anchoring effect. And it's like, once you see a number, it like in your mind, you go back to it, even if there's no real basis for it. So you're like, okay, you see, oh, this guy is ranked number 10. Well, I don't like him that much. So maybe I'll put him like 15. But it's because you already have that pre-existing knowledge of where it's like with the college, like with the college football polls, the college basketball polls, they rank the top 25 at the start of the season, right? And they move guys up and down based off that initial ranking.
Yeah.
But that's what doesn't have to mean anything. It's just like a ranking people came up with. So really, you have to start from fresh without worrying about what anyone else has said. And that's what I'm trying this year. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll be really wrong. I don't know.
What I did last year and I'm doing again this year, I like the way it worked out, is I'm just not setting rankings. I'm just not setting rankings for as long until I basically make you. Until I need to set rankings.
Which, by the way, we should probably start thinking about that soon.
We should think about that soon. I'm gonna resist. I just think not setting rankings, personally, sometimes you can get locked into an evaluation too early. If you have a guy ranked 3rd or 5th or whatever, or 20th early in the season, sometimes you can anchor to that position, like you said, John, with your own rankings, never mind others. So I think for me, just throwing guys, in tiers, just in big groups, big clumps, that has helped for me in terms of ranking players, especially towards the middle of the draft. I think I feel a little more comfortable going into the draft. I think either way, if you're looking at draft rankings, you can't worry about if someone has it drastically different. If anything, that should make you question, why is it different? Maybe I should look at this player a little bit differently.
Yeah, and it changes so fast. Danny, do you remember you were talking about Werder last year?
Oh, yeah.
And you were like, oh, I really like this guy, but man, maybe I could have him at 20. And it seemed crazy at the time because he was like ranked 45 everywhere.
Yeah.
But then he goes 17 anyways. Like, they can move in a week. Jerome Robinson, too.
Absolutely. And I think even, besides what happens on the day of the draft, right? What happens 5 years later when you're looking at it, the draft is never in the same order that guys goes or what rankings were, right? That's why we have redrafts, right? That's why we do.
I mean, it's actually kind of funny. The 2016 draft was one of the wildest orders I can remember. I can't even remember the guy who the Kings draft. What's his name?
Georgios Papagiannis.
There you go. And Yabusele was in there.
Yep.
Yabusele was
16th.
Maybe like a, fringe first round, second round guy for me.
I had him, I think, in my 3rd or 4th tier, whatever group it was.
I literally had no idea who that was, I'll be honest.
That draft was especially weird because, like you said, Danny, I think after that draft, after the 9 or 10 or 11 guys, it fell off where it's from 11 to 40. I remember talking to executives that year. You could have guys in any old order, right? I think
remember Thon went 10. No one saw that.
Thon went 10. Nobody expected that. That was a really, really weird year. Speaking about Thon Maker, moving on to the weekend, Milwaukee Bucks have games against the Golden State Warriors on Friday, and then the Toronto Raptors on Sunday. This is a big weekend for the Bucks, isn't it, Danny?
It's huge. I mean, what are we gonna talk about Chris Middleton and potential?
Yeah, that was weird.
Very odd.
Very odd. And I think the internet sleuths are pointing at a trade, but I don't think that's really the case.
Everything I've heard with Middleton is that the Bucks love him and they're willing to give him what it takes next summer. But it certainly was very odd. What's up with that, John?
Oh, I guess we should say what happened. So it was a game against the Knicks last week. Bud benches him in the 4th quarter, doesn't play him at all.
After playing some horrific defense.
Middleton he kind of reams him out. And then
really bad
the
defense.
Next game he missed for personal reasons, right? It was just kind of like, well, what's going on there?
Regardless, Milwaukee Bucks, what are you looking for this weekend from them in 2 tough games against Golden State Warriors and Toronto Raptors, John?
I think to me, especially with the Raptors game, I just want to see who Bud trusts 6 to 9. He loves Ilyasova. Ilyasova's out. I just think how are they going to build out the back of their rotation against a good elite team? They've been playing Sterling Brown, Pat Connaughton, DiVincenzo, Tony Snell. They've got a lot of guys who we're all unsure about right now. And those guys are going to matter in the playoffs. They got to find 2 or 3 they really trust and give them 15 minutes a night against the elite teams.
Yeah. And against the Warriors, I think Draymond's going to be out. So it's going to be very up and down. And I think the Bucks will try to dictate, the style of play there. There are going to be a lot of threes being taken. And that's kind of the worrisome thing because when you go to the Warriors into taking threes, I don't think you can win that competition necessarily, but there's definitely a way for, Giannis to kind of set the stage there.
Danny, with Draymond out, do you think we'll see Giannis versus KD? I think KD would guard him.
We can dream.
I would love, that's what I want to see.
That would be beautiful to watch. Golden State, their stretch coming out, their next 11 games are all against pretty difficult opponents. Milwaukee, Minnesota, Toronto, Sacramento, Memphis, Utah, Dallas, Clippers, Lakers, Portland, and then they face Phoenix on New Year's Eve.
What a cherry on top.
Yeah, it's quite a cherry. This month for Golden State, obviously a test, as it is for most Western Conference teams. With Steph Curry back now, obviously Draymond's not back quite yet. Have you seen anything from Golden State over these past 2 games after they sputtered a little bit that suggests that they're about to turn it on and become the Golden State Warriors, John?
You know what helps? It's just kind of mean, but Damian Jones being out the rest of the season probably helps him a lot. Like, he was not good.
And
they were really giving him
Al McKinney being back as well. I know he's a guy that you mentioned earlier in the season, John, that you like.
Yeah, I think McKinney and Looney I think those are kind of role players you need. I think having those 2 guys playing bigger roles will help them a lot. Plus, obviously, getting Steph back.
You have any other Golden State thoughts, either of you guys, that you want to hit on before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think Kerr's found some lineups that make sense now. Like, they're starting, they go Steph, Clay, Durant, Looney, Iguodala. I think that works pretty well. Then you have off the bench McKinney, Jerebko, Livingston. I think they're starting to find units that make sense. And you have the stars with Golden State. And so if you can find good rotations around those stars, the rest falls together pretty easily.
By next week's show, will both Golden State and Toronto be the number 1 seeds in their respective conferences, Danny?
Right
now, Golden State is back by 1 game.
I will say yes. I believe in Steph.
And Toronto's up 3.5 on Milwaukee.
Yeah, Toronto's up 3.5 games. They'll be number 1.
Yeah, they'll be number 1.
So is this a finals preview? As of today, right now, is this a finals preview, Toronto versus Golden State?
Yes.
John?
I want to see this Toronto-Milwaukee game. I want to see Giannis versus Kawhi. That to me is the big question right now.
So it could be Milwaukee, Golden State then.
I feel like these are the 3 best teams in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto, Milwaukee, Golden State.
Yeah. We can't ignore the Bucks net rating, which is through the roof right now.
Outrageous. Yeah. It'll be fascinating. I'm looking forward to seeing these 2 games. Fortunately, it's all we have time for today. Danny, John, looking forward to next Friday. Thank you guys.
As always.
And thank you for listening to The Corner 3. Please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody that you know about the show. Make us all really happy if you do. Special shout out to Bobby Wagner for producing the podcast and to my good friend Elon for listening to the show. We'll be back next Friday. Thank you again for listening. Have a beautiful weekend.